Steve, I want to talk about the source material for this film. It's something that you saw when you were growing up. Could you tell us what you remember from the original Widows, why it stuck with you, and why it was something you wanted to revisit?
It was something about those women. They're just women that sort of had a purpose, really. Often when you see a TV show, it's, the hero or the heroes sort of, bump into things, whatever. These women had to. There was a necessity, an actuality to their intentions. And being 13 years old, seeing these women on TV, I had an immediate connection with them. They were being judged by their appearance. They're being judged of not being capable, similar to how I was being judged as a 13-year-old child growing up in London. And, often I would project myself onto Sean Connery on James Bond or Johnny Weissmuller, playing Tarzan. But I remember seeing it and recognizing and seeing myself in these women.
Gillian, when you think about the things that you want to retain from the original story and the things that you want to change, what were the most important elements to preserve, and where did you figure that you needed to make the most dramatic changes from the source material?
Yeah, I mean, Linda LaPlante had given us some beautiful DNA to begin with the miniseries, and so we knew, we loved the idea of the widows and the heist, but certainly, one of the huge things was in making it current and making it feel real was that idea that we wanted these women to be incredibly identifiable in present day. That we wanted them, they 4 women. We wanted some of them to have kids, for instance. We wanted to see what childcare looked like in the middle of this incredibly dangerous heist. We wanted it to be very clear, that the danger and the fear and what it looked like when 4 women were coming together to make a team. And we also wanted to make sure that they were of different races and economic backgrounds, so that when you looked on screen, for a blessed change, that they looked like women of today.
Steve, at what point did you decide that you wanted to locate this story in Chicago, and why was that city important in terms of what it told about the broader story that you were trying to illustrate?
Well, I've been going to Chicago for 22 years. At first, I was invited to do an exhibition in the Museum of Modern Art. There was my first solo show, and at the same time, my girlfriend at the time, who now is my wife, was going to the Democratic Convention when Bill Clinton was the president. So I say my first footprint in Chicago was art and politics. And since going there back and forth, it was about, the sort of racial divide, Lithuanian, Polish, Irish, African American, Latino. It was just people rubbing shoulder to shoulder with each other, because it's such a small, proximity for geographically where everything is. And of course, it was just one of those places. What it was for me, as well as all of that, was I wanted to place it in a heightened contemporary Western city. And for me, Chicago had all the things I wanted to deal with: politics, corruption, policing, religion, et cetera, et cetera.
Iain, we know what the typical studio remake of Widows is. It's called Widowers, and it's about men, that the tables are turned.
Starring Liam Neeson, Colin Farrell,
right.
Daniel Kaluuya, Brian Tyree Henry.
Exactly. So how do you make sure, given what this story is about, that you preserve the idea that Steve and Gillian are after, that this is not widowers, this is widows, and to make sure that you are creating a team around Steve that's going to be able to help him realize his vision?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it sort of started off when Fox and New Regency got hold of the rights and we started developing it. Basically, people would go, "Oh, that's a unique idea. That's a novel idea." And the show is 83, so it's been a long time between that novel idea and this novel idea, and hopefully that changes. But I think, what makes it sing is the incredible actors that we had in the 4 leads and those 4 women and their incredible performances. But I think also what's really important is that great actors also play the male supporting roles in films like this. That it's about the caliber, not assuming to drop because it's a female lead, but being celebrated because it's a female lead. And I think we had that with great performances from our leads and great male supporting performances from our male actors.
Elizabeth, before I ask about how you came into the project, I want to ask you and Viola, was there a moment when you were on set as the 4 leads of this film and said to each other, either out loud or to yourselves, "Holy shit, here we are, 4 women leading a studio film"?
Yes. I think almost every day, to be honest. That I was saying to Steve not long ago, I'm so glad that I was aware of how special this experience was making this film, because I so actively soaked up every second of this set, from being under Steve's guidance and having that incredible collaboration with his brilliant mind and heart and soul, and then working with these women who I just adore. And, you know, we were so lucky too that Steve set up space for us before we even got on set, that we were really bonded and we understood that we could be very honest with each other. And I think that meant that the work we were doing was honest and sort of revelatory. You know, I learned a huge amount doing it.
And also we reveled in the fact that we could play real women.
Right.
You know, you don't often get that. You sort of start with yourself, and then it's like those paper dolls you used to have when you were a kid. You're like putting different things on you to filter yourself down to meet basically to become an extension of male fantasy or female fantasy. But the fact that Steve wanted, you know, for lack of a better term, real women, you know, to headline, you know, this movie, I thought was very novel.
And I think, Viola and Elizabeth, it's very important that the heist is not something that's going to make them rich. It's going to allow them to survive. That these women have no alternative. It is this or their lives essentially cease. That the stakes are not about having money. The stakes are about surviving. And that seemed to be very important, I think, in the adaptation. Can you talk a little bit about how you talked about that with Steve and Gillian, and why that's the important driving force for these characters' behavior?
That was my first thing, because I'm like, I've seen a lot of movies where people rob banks and they're coming from seemingly normal lives. Why do people rob banks? I mean, listen, I have been through periods in my life where it's been hardcore, but I've never, you know, except when I was 9, I tried to steal a brownie. But
Tried, you didn't get it.
no, I was thrown out of the store. But yeah, I think it's important to see that, because sometimes it's about a Sophie's choice. Mm-hmm. That's when people do things completely outside of the box. But it also became a metaphor for these women taking ownership of their lives. And that's what I love so much about this narrative, that it's not just this thinly veiled story of these women just like sort of saying, you know, my husbands are dead, now we need some money, we need some cash to pay the rent. Right. Stories have a deeper nucleus that start at the core of politics, of economic subterfuge, of sexism, of racism. And I think Steve was like, you know what, I'm going to tackle this giant. And I'm really going to tell the story from its core. So it made sense to me that they committed this heist. It just made sense. He made sense of it.
Steve, thank you so much. Gillian, Iain, Elizabeth, and Viola, and thank you all for coming out.